Hey everyone, I'm James. What you're looking at is surveillance footage from a residential tower in Sydney, Australia. That's 34-year-old Tatiana Dokotaru stepping into an elevator to go up to her apartment. In just a few hours, she would be on the phone with emergency services, desperately calling for help. And on another camera, police would later spot a man running from the building. That footage would change everything and expose a brutal truth. Tatiana Dokotaru grew up in Surrey, British Columbia, a sprawling suburb just south of Vancouver, Canada. In 2012, at 23 years old, Tatiana made a decision that would change the course of her life. She left Canada and moved to Sydney, Australia, nearly 13,000 kilometers away from everything and everyone she knew. It's a bold move for anyone, especially a young woman in her early 20s. But Tatiana wasn't the type to play it safe. She wanted something different, something bigger. And Australia offered that promise of a fresh start. What drew her to Sydney specifically, we don't know for certain, but it was there, in this new country on the other side of the world, that she would meet Danny Zayat. Zayat was a concreter by trade, a construction worker who poured concrete for a living. What is clear is that the two began a relationship that moved quickly. They eventually married, and sometime around 2018 or 2019, they had a son together. For a while, it probably looked like the life Tatiana had been building was coming together. A husband, a child, a new home in a country she'd chosen for herself. From the outside, it might have seemed like she had everything she wanted, but appearances, as we know, can be deceiving. One thing that's important to understand about Tatiana is that she wasn't dependent on anyone, not financially at least. While her relationship with Zayat developed, she was building something of her own. She launched an Instagram-based business selling imitation designer goods, handbags, accessories, the kind of things that look expensive but don't cost a fortune. It's not a glamorous business model, but it's a hustle. And Tatiana had hustle. She also ran a solarium out of her apartment, a tanning bed business that gave her another stream of income. Between the two ventures, she was making real money. Not just getting by money, real money. How do we know this? Because Tatiana kept her savings at home, approximately 130,000 Australian dollars stored in a pink shoebox in her apartment. That's years of work, carefully saved, representing her independence and her plans for the future. That shoebox and its contents would later feature prominently in police reports and court proceedings. But we'll get to that part of the story soon enough. Zayat, by contrast, was struggling. He had accumulated thousands of dollars in unpaid fines. His financial situation was precarious at best, and that disparity between Tatiana's growing success and Zayat's mounting debts would eventually become a flashpoint in their relationship. I want to pause here for a moment, because it's easy when we tell stories like this to reduce the victim to just that, a victim, someone whose entire existence gets defined by what was done to them. But Tatiana was so much more than the worst thing that happened to her. She was a daughter who stayed close to her mother even from thousands of miles away. She was a friend who showed up for the people she loved. She was a businesswoman who built something from nothing in a country where she had no safety net. And she was a mother. Whatever else was happening in her life, whatever chaos surrounded her relationship with Zayat, she had a little boy who depended on her, a little boy she loved. When her close friend Amber Haleta later tried to explain why Tatiana stayed in a relationship that was clearly becoming dangerous, she said something that stuck with me. Tatiana had told her, "I can't take him away from his father. I can't have my son not have a father." That's not naivety. That's a mother trying to do what she thinks is right for her child, even when it puts her in harm's way. By 2022, the relationship between Tatiana and Danny Zayat had deteriorated beyond repair. By May 2022, Tatiana had taken a significant legal step. She obtained an apprehended violence order against Zayat, Australia's version of a restraining order. It was supposed to keep him away from her. It was supposed to protect her. It didn't. In reality, it meant nothing to Danny Zayat. Court documents would later reveal that Zayat had been physically assaulting Tatiana for years. The attacks followed a predictable cycle. First came the threats, then the surveillance, checking her phone, tracking her movements, making sure she wasn't talking to other men. Then came the violence itself. And finally, the apologies, the declarations of love, the promises that it would never happen again. It always happened again. In April 2023, Tatiana confided in a friend named Ariane Monchizada about what had happened the night before. The message she sent was raw and unfiltered. Zayat had discovered she'd been messaging other men on her phone. His response was explosive. "I was fighting him off," she wrote. "I tried calling the cops, but he said he'll kill me if I do." She described how he dragged her by her hair, spat on her face repeatedly, she counted about 20 times, and threw her phone across the room. "It was absolute hell," she told her friend. "My body is in shock." That phrase, absolute hell, would later be read aloud in court, a window into what Tatiana's daily existence had become. But April wasn't the end of it. The violence continued into May. On May 1st, 2023, Tatiana texted Ariane again. This time, the message was even more alarming. "He strangled me so bad, my throat is so bruised and swollen I can barely breathe." Think about that for a second. She wasn't describing a slap or a shove. She was describing strangulation, one of the most significant predictors of future homicide in domestic violence cases. Tatiana knew she was in danger. Her body told her, her bruised throat told her. But knowing you're in danger and being able to escape it are two very different things. Her mother, Olya, watched all of this from thousands of miles away in Canada. Tatiana had sent her videos, footage showing bruises around her throat, the kind of bruises that leave fingerprint marks, the kind that show exactly how someone's hands wrapped around your neck and squeezed. Olya was terrified for her daughter. The abuse didn't stop when Tatiana tried to get away. Even when she traveled, visiting her family in Canada, taking a trip to Thailand, Zayat found ways to reach her. His harassment continued through phone calls and messages, a constant reminder that distance didn't mean safety. On May 26, 2023, the last day of Tatiana Dokotaru's life began like many others before it. CCTV footage from her apartment building shows Tatiana and Danny Zayat together around 3 p.m. that Friday afternoon, waiting for an elevator. Despite the restraining order, despite everything he had done to her, they were together. This was the cycle, the violence, the apologies, the reconciliation. The restraining order existed on paper, but it couldn't stop Tatiana from hoping that this time would be different, that he had changed, that the man she once loved was still in there somewhere. Zayat left at some point that afternoon, and that evening, Tatiana had a friend over for dinner. They shared a meal, drank some wine, talked. A normal evening, the kind of evening that doesn't feel like it could be anyone's last. After her friend left, Tatiana was alone with her 4-year-old son, and sometime that night, she made a decision that would prove fatal. She texted Danny Zayat, "I love you. I'm giving you a second chance." She told him she missed him, that she was in so much pain from an earlier attack he had inflicted on her, and she invited him back. CCTV footage shows Zayat arriving at her building at 10:35 p.m. He was in her apartment for 65 minutes. At 11:36 p.m., Tatiana Dokotaru dialed 000, Australia's emergency number. Zayat didn't come that night just to talk. He came for money. Remember the pink shoebox I mentioned earlier? Police believe there was roughly 130,000 Australian dollars in that box. Money that represented her independence, her security, her plans for the future. Zayat was drowning in debt, and he knew exactly where his ex-partner kept her savings. The neighbors heard it start. Through the walls of the apartment complex, residents in adjacent units heard what one witness described as explosive language. A man's voice, screaming, not the kind of yelling you hear during a normal argument, something darker, something violent. Then came the thuds, the sounds of things breaking, glass shattering. Inside that apartment, Tatiana was fighting for her life. At 11:36 p.m., Tatiana managed to grab her phone. She dialed 000, and in 89 seconds, she tried to save her own life. "Yes, hi. My ex-boyfriend's here and he's trying to kill me." Those were her first words to the operator. No hesitation, no ambiguity. She knew exactly what was happening to her.
"My ex-boyfriend's here and he's trying to kill me. Stop! Can I get Capital City?
The operator asked for more information. She gave them the street address. She was trying to give them everything they needed to find her. But before she could provide the apartment number, before she could tell them which of the 300 units in that building was hers, the line went dead.
Give me my money. Give me my money.
Place in
Yeah,
emergency.
my
What do you need, please,
ex-husband's
to go to?
stealing my money from my house, and she's bashing me.
What address do you need police to go to, please?
It's 10 Norfolk Street, Liverpool.
Zayat had taken the phone from her hands. What happened next was captured on CCTV. The camera was pointed upward, toward the balconies above. In that footage, captured in the darkness of night, you can see something glowing arc out from the 22nd floor and fall, the bright rectangle of a phone screen tumbling through the darkness. Tatiana's phone, thrown from the balcony while she was still on the line with emergency services. It was a calculated move. Without her phone, Tatiana couldn't call for help again. Without the phone, police would have a harder time tracking her location or accessing any evidence stored on the device. The phone was never recovered. The violence that night was severe enough to leave physical evidence throughout the apartment. And then Zayat left. CCTV footage shows him exiting the building, moving quickly, concealing something under his jacket. Prosecutors believe it was the cash, Tatiana's savings, the money she had worked years to accumulate. The attack happened while her 4-year-old son was in the apartment. He wasn't asleep. Later, when police interviewed him, he would tell them what he remembered from that night. Daddy was angry. Daddy was angry. And he remembered hearing his mother's voice, screaming, "Help me, help me." A 4-year-old child listening to his mother beg for her life. She was on the couch. She wasn't moving. He tried to wake her up. He couldn't. "I couldn't wake mommy up." He stayed in that apartment with her body for hours. A 4-year-old child, alone with his dead mother, waiting for someone to come. No one came. Not for a very long time. Let me be very clear about what happened next, because this is the part of the story that should make you angry. Tatiana Dokotaru called emergency services. She said, in plain English, that her ex-boyfriend was trying to kill her. She said she was being attacked. She gave the dispatcher her street address, and her call was classified as Priority 3. In the New South Wales Emergency Response System, calls are ranked by urgency. Priority 1 means officers are dispatched immediately. Lights and sirens. Priority 2 is serious, but not immediately life-threatening. Priority 3, that's the lowest category. It means we'll get to it when we can. A woman being beaten in her apartment, who explicitly stated that someone was trying to kill her, was placed in the same category as a noise complaint or a minor property dispute. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I don't think there's any way to explain it that makes sense. A dispatcher heard a woman say, "He's trying to kill me," and decided it wasn't an emergency. Police wouldn't arrive at the apartment complex for approximately 3 hours after that call was made. 3 hours. When officers finally did arrive at the high-rise, they faced a problem. Tatiana had given the street address, but she hadn't been able to provide her unit number before Zayat ripped the phone from her hands. The building contained roughly 300 separate apartments spread across more than 20 floors. Without a specific unit number, police couldn't simply knock on the right door. They would need to do some actual investigative work, check databases, contact the property management company, search floor by floor if necessary. They didn't do any of that. They looked around. They couldn't immediately identify which apartment the call had come from, and so they left. They just left. A woman had called saying her ex was trying to kill her. Police arrived 3 hours late, couldn't find her apartment, and went home. Here's what could have happened instead. Phone records could have been checked. In 2023, it's not particularly difficult to link a phone number to an address, even a specific apartment number. Police dispatch systems routinely have access to this kind of information. Building management could have been contacted. Even in the middle of the night, there are emergency contacts for residential buildings. A property manager could have been woken up and asked to identify which unit was registered to Tatiana Dokotaru. A floor-by-floor search could have been conducted. Yes, 300 apartments is a lot, but officers could have started knocking on doors, asking if anyone had heard a disturbance, following up on any signs of a struggle. None of this happened. After the murder came to light, questions immediately arose about the police response. Why had Tatiana's call been classified as Priority 3? Why had officers left the building without finding her? Could she have been saved if police had arrived sooner? These aren't comfortable questions, and the New South Wales police didn't seem eager to answer them. In the aftermath of Tatiana's death, Assistant Commissioner Stuart Smith announced that an investigation would be conducted into the police response. The investigation would be handled by the Fairfield City Police Area Command and would be subject to independent review. But here's a telling detail. In 2022, the year before Tatiana's death, more than 33,000 instances of domestic violence were reported in New South Wales. And when journalists asked for data on average police response times to domestic violence calls, police refused to release that information. They refused. I don't know if Tatiana could have been saved if police had arrived sooner. The pathologist testified that she died from blunt force head trauma, 3 separate injuries that caused a fatal brain hemorrhage. But we'll never know for certain because police didn't arrive in time to find out. What we do know is this: a woman did everything she was supposed to do. She made the call, she gave the address, and the system that was supposed to respond, the system that exists for moments exactly like this one, treated her emergency as something that could wait. It couldn't wait, and now she's dead. 20 hours. That's how long Danny Zayat stayed away from the apartment after he beat Tatiana Dokotaru and left her dying on the floor. 20 hours while her body lay on the couch. 20 hours while their 4-year-old son tried to wake his mother and couldn't understand why she wouldn't open her eyes. And then, on the evening of May 27th, Zayat came back. What happened next was captured on police body cameras, and what those cameras recorded would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the trial. Not because it showed grief, but because it showed something else entirely. Before Zayat called emergency services, neighbors heard him in the hallway. A neighbor who lived in the apartment directly across from Tatiana's unit told the court that he heard a man running up and down the corridor, shouting and banging on doors. It just sounded like someone was in the hallway just crying, distressed, he testified. At the time, it might have seemed like the behavior of a man who had just discovered something terrible. A man in shock, a man desperate for help. But here's what the neighbors didn't know. Zayat had been in that apartment the night before. He knew exactly what he would find when he went back. The distress in the hallway wasn't discovery, it was performance. Zayat made 2 separate calls to 000 that evening. Both were recorded and later played for the jury. According to court records, Zayat called emergency services in a state of apparent distress. He was wailing, at times becoming incoherent. The emergency operator tried to give him instructions for CPR, but Zayat struggled to follow along. "She's not breathing," he told the operator. "She's got blood coming out of her nose."
Is she awake? Is she breathing?
No, she's not breathing. She's got blood coming out of her nose.
Okay.
He told them he had just arrived and found her like this, that she had been depressed, that he shouldn't have left her alone. It was a convincing performance. Prosecutors would later call it exactly that, a performance, and then a statement that would come back to haunt him. It looks like she's been dead for a while. That last part is interesting, because if you genuinely discovered your ex-partner's body and had no idea what happened, would your first instinct be to estimate how long she'd been dead? Or would you be focused on trying to save her? Zayat was already building distance, already creating a timeline that placed him far away from the moment of her death, already laying the groundwork for his defense. When police and paramedics arrived at the apartment, they found Zayat in a state of apparent emotional collapse. Body camera footage, later released publicly, shows him crying, pleading with officers, seemingly devastated by what he had found.
I should have left her, but she's been depressed, man. She's been depressed. She's been so depressed, I should have left her. I should have left her alive.
Right, have a seat, Danny. Have a seat. Have a seat. Try to catch your breath, all right?
I can't believe she's done that to herself. I'm walking. How can she leave it walking?
It's the kind of footage that, in another context, might generate sympathy. A man broken by loss, a partner overcome with grief. But prosecutors had a different word for what they saw on that footage: crocodile tears. In the recording, Zayat can be heard saying something that would become central to the prosecution's case. Over and over he repeated, "I shouldn't have left her. She's been so depressed. She's been so depressed." Notice what he's doing there. He's not asking what happened. He's not demanding to know who hurt her. He's already providing an explanation, and that explanation points directly at Tatiana herself. Depression, self-harm, mental health crisis. From the very first moment police arrived, Zayat was trying to make them believe that Tatiana had done this to herself. But the most damaging testimony about Zayat's emotional performance didn't come from prosecutors or forensic experts. It came from a 4-year-old boy. During the trial, Tatiana's son was asked about his father's behavior when police arrived at the apartment. What he said was simple, direct, and devastating. He was fake crying, the child told the court. When asked to explain what he meant, the boy elaborated. He was crying, but he wasn't sad. Children don't understand deception the way adults do. They don't have the cognitive framework to analyze someone's emotional performance and assess its authenticity, but they often recognize when something feels wrong, when the tears don't match the feeling behind them. He was crying, but he wasn't sad. In the weeks after Tatiana's death, police intercepted phone conversations that Zayat was having with other people. In those calls, recorded in June 2023, Zayat continued to push the narrative he had started building the moment he discovered her body. He told one person that he had a gut feeling Tatiana was going to do something to herself. He claimed she had told him plenty of times that she was suicidal.
I had a gut feeling that something was going to happen, bro. Something was going to happen. She's told me plenty of times she's been suicidal.
These statements weren't grief. They weren't confusion. They were a deliberate attempt to shape the investigation, to make police and prosecutors believe that Tatiana had taken her own life, not that he had taken it from her. But the evidence told a different story. 3 blunt force injuries to the head, a fatal brain hemorrhage, a phone thrown from a 22nd floor balcony, a man fleeing the building with $130,000 in stolen cash. On August 28, 2023, 3 months after Tatiana's death, police made their move. Officers arrested Danny Zayat at a residence in St. Clair. He was initially charged with 18 separate domestic violence offenses related to his treatment of Tatiana during their relationship. But those charges were just the beginning. Shortly after his arrest, prosecutors upgraded the charges. Danny Zayat was formally charged with murder. He appeared at Penrith Local Court on August 28, where he was denied bail and remanded in custody. He would remain behind bars for the next 2 years as the case slowly moved toward trial. The trial began in October 2025, more than 2 years after Tatiana Dokotaru's death. The prosecution's theory was straightforward. On the night of May 26, 2023, Danny Zayat had gone to Tatiana Dokotaru's apartment with the intention of stealing her money. When she resisted, when she tried to call for help, he attacked her with such violence that she sustained 3 separate blunt force injuries to her head. Those injuries caused a fatal brain hemorrhage, and then he fled, leaving her to die. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and then, in early November 2025, the jury retired to deliberate. They would spend nearly 4 days reviewing the evidence before reaching their verdict. The verdict was guilty. Majority decision, 11-1. On December 19, 2025, Danny Zayat was sentenced to 24 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 18 years. Thank you for watching. I'm James, and I'll see you in the next one.